I mean, the bad news just keeps piling up. It's feeling kind of excessive. But I got to tell you about this one. In going through all the data from the jobs report we got on Friday, there's one thing in there that, well, the mainstream media isn't talking about. In fact, the New York Times has a glowing piece about how wages are going up right now. Well, you know what? Adjusted for inflation, real wages, they're not going up at all. They're down 0.1% in the last month to month, and they are down 1.2% between July of 2020 and July of 2021. In other words, people have less money in their pockets because we've got so much darn inflation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. And yeah, I mean, look, I like to tell you about good things. I mean, the good thing is we do have a market that's been on fire, right? We have gold prices going up. We have real estate prices going up. So if you're invested in any of those things, right, you get a little bit of good news. But, you know, for everyday Americans, life is getting increasingly harder and harder because, you know, it's not just what you feel right now, right? I think a lot of people have felt like, oh gosh, you know, things are getting tougher. There's now evidence of it. Your money doesn't go as far. In fact, when you look again at real wages, real average hourly wages, they show a decline. Not just in the month over month number, but again, down 1.2% in the last year. And I'm shocked that nobody's reporting this, right? I love the New York Times headlines. Let's see if I can pull it up for you. They're all bragging about, oh, it's so great. We're finally getting some wage inflation. Well, listen, you're not really getting wage inflation if you've got tons of inflation in the overall economy, right? And that's what we have. We'll get an additional read on that coming up pretty soon. In fact, this Friday, we'll be watching for the Consumer Price Index report. We saw last month that prices were up 7.8% in the last year. That's a record. Like they've never increased that much before. Okay, but it makes all the sense in the world, given that you've had some pent-up demand, right? People have a little bit more money, which is nice, but that's because they saved it because they weren't going out for a year. So you have all that pent-up demand, combined with, you know, multiple stimulus checks, combined with a Federal Reserve that's printing, and consequently you get an environment such as we have right now, where you have some serious inflation. So we've got inflation. People aren't earning enough to keep up with this inflation. We're going to get a bigger read on inflation, of course, coming out on Friday, and then the week after that. So that's this Friday, and the week after that, we're going to get the Consumer Price Index, which is going to be really important to see because it has been increasing at a 5.4% rate. You see, so it doesn't matter. You know, if wages go up 3 or 4%, if your price is going up 5.4%, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out, guess what, Americans do not have as much money. And that's, in fact, what the situation is right now. Just a reminder, everyone, I want to let you know you can go and download the entire audio version of this podcast. You can do so on Apple's iTunes, The Trish Regan Show, or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. So please do make sure you do that. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you get it every single day on your phone or on your computer. And quickly, I want to remind you, I always remind you to subscribe to my newsletter. TrishIntel.com is my website. TrishIntel.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter there and get all the stories that we are covering. It's important right now because you know what? They are, meaning big tech, I guess, those in politics that don't want all voices to be heard, those that want the media to spin wage growth as being, you know, fantastic when in fact nobody's looking at the inflation numbers and thus the real average hourly wage growth. Anyway, I do all that, and I promise you the news is not always pretty, it's not always good, but it is in fact real. And so again, just keep in mind when you look at wage growth and you have those that are trying to spin this for political purposes, trying to tell you, oh, it's great, you know, wages are finally going up, you have to counter with, well, what is inflation? What are those wages adjusted for inflation? And what you find out is that they're actually lower. Okay, so there's going to have to be a whole lot of wage growth to keep up with all the inflation we're seeing in the price of everything else. So do sign up there for that newsletter. I want to get to the other story that really, I think, just disheartens me right now. because it feels as though America is increasingly sort of losing its morality thanks to this Afghanistan situation. Here we are, of course, just days away from the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We are finally out. So I guess the politician gets to make the speech that he wanted. We are out. But how can anybody say we are out when there are still hundreds of Americans there on the ground struggling to get out? And what is so astonishing is that you have private groups now, private citizens that are coming to the rescue. I mean, for goodness sakes, when it's up to Glenn Beck, right, to send a couple of planes over and get people out, what does that tell you? It tells you Joe Biden and this administration, they do not care. There's a story being reported of an American woman who went over with a couple of her kids to Afghanistan to visit her family, to visit her parents, and then the Taliban, came in, took over, and she was stuck there and she couldn't get out. And so some private citizens arranged for a land transfer. She was able to get out, not via the airport, but by trekking out of the country, which has been very difficult to do because, of course, all the borders are closed and the Taliban is there and it's extremely dangerous. And so private citizens arranged this. And what's so appalling is that instead of saying thank you and giving them credit, the White House turned around and said, well, the Taliban knew about it and they chose to let her go. So it's almost as though they're trying to make excuses for the Taliban. I guess, they really want to give them that $9 billion? I am so, again, I guess the word is disheartened. I could go further and say just disgusted by how this has been handled. I don't dispute that we wanted to get out, that we needed to get out, but it's how it was done and the lack of planning. I mean, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, and it's sort of Jake Sullivan looking like he's the only adult in the room because in some of these State Department meetings, I guess he raised his hand and said, well, maybe we shouldn't take all the military out before we get all the people out. I'm like, you think? Now, how is it that nobody was really exploring that, right? Why would you ever get your military out before you got your people out? It's so appalling. It is so disheartening. It shows you the sort of moral void, if you would, that I think is going on in this administration right now. And I'm sorry, there's no excuse for it. I suspect things are going to be increasingly worse as a result of us not having anybody there. No eyes, no ears on the ground whatsoever. So, it's like just, I'm sorry, it's a bad time. It feels like, and I was just a little kid, but I remember the gas lines, and I certainly remember seeing them on TV. It feels like the 1970s and Jimmy Carter all over again. We've got Americans effectively hostage. Oh, but don't say that, right? Because right now the spin from those that are trying to support this no matter what, this administration, they would say, oh, you can't say they're hostage because, they could go back to their homes. Well, no, they're hostage because they can't leave the country, okay? So, I mean, maybe they're, not being starved to death or whipped or whatever. I don't know, but I'm sorry, they're still hostage. They are still hostage, and I don't think that there's any way that you can spin this in any kind of a nice way. But it gets me to just this lack of faith that I think I have, that so many of us have right now in our government, and it's very frustrating. But, they can't seem to do anything right, and we can't count on them to get out of an area that we've been in for 20 years. So how are we supposed to count on them for anything? I mean, even in terms of privacy, right? I have a lot of concerns about this sort of new age of warfare and the dangers of cyber threats and the dangers that they pose to all of us as individuals, including in, like just things online, right? You're surfing online, and there's some eyes and ears effectively on your computer, keeping an eye on all that stuff. And in your email, right? There's all these promotional emails you can get. I mean, I got one years ago from a number of these services, but I've since come to realize, as maybe you have too, that none of this is free, right? Because all of these companies are making money off of us by tracking what we do. They know what's in our emails, all this sensitive information that could be on your business or perhaps on your health, and they have access to it all. I mean, they've got algorithms that basically try and know you better than you know yourself, and I find that kind of alarming. And they're making money on it, by the way. They are making money. So when they tell you how you get a free email, no, it's not free. I mean, you are giving up so much, which is why I'm excited to tell you about a new company that I've found called StartMail. And StartMail, it protects that privacy. They don't sell your information. They don't look at your emails. They have no algorithms to try and figure out who you are. And you pay for it, but you should. Right? Like we need to protect our privacy. Just like you go and you get a key for your house and you pay for that key and you maybe pay for an alarm company, you need to have the same kind of thing on your computer and on your email. So I am excited to tell you about StartMail. StartMail can kind of make you feel safe again. I mean, that's how I sort of feel about it with email. You just know that if you've got one of these free services from Yahoo or Gmail, they're reading everything. But with StartMail, you can feel so much better about it all. And I'm excited because I have a special deal with the company that I have worked out for you, 50% off for the first year. 50% off if you use the code word Trish, Trish. StartMail, again, is the name of the company, START mail. So startmail.com/Trish. If you're watching the video version of this show on Rumble or on YouTube or on Facebook or IGTV, we have it right there on the bottom of your screen. You can see startmail.com/Trish. Remember, nothing's really free in this world. I want to turn back to the market for a second, and this is a lot of what you should also, another reason to subscribe to my newsletter, because we do a lot of these market stories, but I just want to point out that as bad as it all is, right, with the jobs report, nice little gift for Labor Day there, I guess. 25,000 jobs were added instead of the expected 700,000 plus. So really bad. Okay, just complete total whiff, total miss. But I think the market's going to continue going up, and I think it could continue being sort of a prosperous time for a lot of these stocks because, well, earnings have been strong. I mean, earnings just blew it out of the water. They were way out of what a lot of people thought. 95.6% increase in last quarter's earnings. Analyst estimates are somewhere for just under 30% increase in earnings for this quarter, the third quarter, which is going to begin. Really, we'll get a lot of that data coming up in October. So ahead of that in September, I think a lot of people are sort of like reshuffling, and a lot of investors are saying, wait a second, I got to keep up with this, right? Because those earnings are going to come in stronger. And that's why you see some of the valuations on stocks moving up and away. And sometimes it's like, whoa, I mean, this is kind of crazy. But it's in part because I think people are playing catch up, if you would. Because, again, 95.6% increase in last quarter's earnings. This quarter is expected to be just under 30%. So obviously then the stock becomes worth more. There's an inflation effect as well, right? And I think that's a reality to factor in too here. I mean, I keep telling people you've got to be on guard for inflation, and some of the best ways to position yourself would be, one, to be in equity markets, right? Two, to be looking at commodities. Gold is one I talk about a lot. I think oil, again, even with the administration, shutting down Keystone, it actually probably helps the price of oil, right? Because it's that much more scarce. Oil is a good place to be. I like real estate investment trusts as well, because it gives you that hedge against inflation, which is here, and there's going to be plenty more of it. And so there's a lot of things actually you should be looking at. We talk about it at trishintel.com. So do sign up for the newsletter. Tech stocks too. Meanwhile, everybody says, oh my gosh, tech stocks are just crazy. The FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Alphabet, formerly known as Google. All of these companies, though, I would anticipate are still going to have increasingly strong earnings, and so thus you want to be in. It's challenging if you're saying, okay, I want to get in today, right? Because they're already trading at such high levels. But if you have been in, I just encourage people to stay in a lot of these equity products, right? The stock market right now, because Until you start getting some real signals from the bond market, I would think that you are still going to have some upside. And right now, we got no signals from the bond market. We got 1.3% on treasuries. My gosh. My gosh. So would you lend me $100 for 10 years at 1.3%? Knowing, by the way, what I just told you about real average hourly earnings, because inflation is so high? Yeah, no, I don't think so, right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Anyway, I want to get to this story because this is extremely important. If you're looking at the bottom of your screen, you can see Senator Klobuchar open to expanding the court, the Supreme Court. So she went on a CNN over the weekend and she did this interview in which she expressed her concerns about what had happened in Texas. And she said she again called for Breyer to resign. She would like to see that, right, so that they can get their person on the court while Joe Biden is in office. But she also said she was open to the idea of packing the court effectively. She said that President Biden has a commission already in place to study this issue, as I've been telling you about almost every day on this show, because I worry about us turning into a Venezuela or Argentina and packing the court. And that's, by the way, one of the first things that happens. And this is exactly, she wants to get rid of the filibuster and have the opportunity to get justices in that are more aligned with her and her party's politics. And so this is serious stuff. I mean, I think that I can't overemphasize how serious it is. We've talked about the court a lot, and I think everybody understand. I mean, look, other presidents have entertained this idea and everybody shut it down really hard. And now all of a sudden they're talking about it and they're not shutting it down. Instead, they get a commission, and you've got senators that have run for president like Klobuchar coming out and saying, yeah, they're open to the idea. I mean, this is kind of bad, right? If you're somebody who cares about this country and cares about law and order and is patriotic and understands that you need a court there to be able to make some of these really important big decisions. Well, this is a really radical idea to pack the court. It is a radical plot, and it's happening, and I think something has to be done, which is why I want to encourage you to check out supremecoup.com. This is a petition that's been put together. You can sign it. This is a letter that's gone to the president, and they'll continue sending letters to the president. First Liberty is the organization. They're a nonprofit law firm, and they're really, or the institute, I should say, and they're taking a stand. They care very much about this. They're scared about, as I am, this effort to reform the court, because the feeling is that the left wants to put 4 more liberal justices on there in order to pack the court. And so they have issued, a letter to the president. They're taking a stand. They've got 100,000 signatures, and you should add your name. You should add your name to this, because look, we've got a great country here, right? We still do, and I think that it's critical to preserve what we have, and not to over dramatize, but look, a lot of great civilizations come to an end. It doesn't have to be that way. We need to uphold the law. We need to uphold our court. So do me that favor. Go to Supreme Court or Supreme Coup, C-O-U-P, supremecoup.com. Sign the petition and show that you care about this. I think we all care about this. And the reality I think I'm just going to leave you with is that, look, Joe Biden is there, whether we like it or not. I mean, I think the guy should just resign over everything that's happened. I think he should clear out everybody in his State Department that came up with these bad ideas. But in actuality, that's probably not going to happen. The next sort of level here is the idea of impeachment. I suspect that if the tables were turned and Donald Trump was in the Oval Office right now, for sure. I mean, he probably would already be impeached, right? I mean, people would be going absolutely crazy. But I don't see that kind of call, if you would, for Joe Biden. So, and I don't think it's necessarily going to happen. I mean, Mitch McConnell said, look, we're not interested in that. And so I think that there may be some effort among some representatives in Congress because, you know, they went through this before and they know how it is and they know how the game is played. But I would also say this, we need to move beyond the politics of this moment. And I'm really horrified by talk of packing the court, taxing everyone. I do think there will be another stimulus plan. There will be more stimulus checks because of this jobs report. I think that all of these things are increasingly leading us in this direction of being more and more like Latin America. And so I worry about it. I want you to go to trishintel.com. I want you to sign up for my newsletter. I want you to be here listening to this channel every single day. I'm here. All of it's free, by the way. Everything is free. I just care about getting this message out. So do your part. Share the message. Tell your friends. I'm here on Apple, iTunes, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, and I am committed to making sure at trishintel.com that you hear the truth. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks for listening.